trying out a new angle for filming. I think it looks good. I think I like it, so we'll see. I might go with this for a while. Hey there, my name is Jasmine Sky, and today I'm going to be doing another Authortube tag. This is the story ideas tag. I'm gonna link both the original video and where I first saw the video down below, so please go and check those out if you wanna see other versions and other people doing this tag. This tag has 10 questions all about story ideas and coming up with them and what you do with them. I come up with ideas all the time. So I'm really excited to go through these questions and to talk to you a little bit about that. So we're just gonna go ahead and dive right in. The first question is current story. What is your current story idea that you're working on right now? I have been working on a witch YA novel, which is the novel that got me my agent. And for the past like 2 months, I've been revising it with my agent. But now I have a break. I just turned in draft 4.5 to my agent and I talked it over with her, and now is the time for me to start a new project for NaNoWriMo, which I'm very, very excited about, and I do plan to vlog Nano, so go ahead and subscribe if you're interested in my NaNoWriMo first draft writing vlogs for my new project. So this new project is going to be a bit of a departure from my Witch YA. Hopefully my Witch YA will sell on sub and it'll sell as a series. So if that's the case, then I don't want to be working on another YA book right now, because if the Witch YA sells and sells as a series, my next YA books will all be in that series. So therefore, after talking it over with my agent, it seemed best if I went ahead and worked on an adult idea, which I love both YA and adult, so I'm super excited to get the chance to explore and write the first draft of one of my adult ideas, because in general, my adult ideas are gonna take me longer to get to a polished state where they're ready to go on submission. So this is just a good time for me to do that messy first draft and get started on that process. I sent my agent a whole list of pitches of various adult ideas that I had that I would love to write, and the one that she was most drawn to, which I'm happy about because it's one of the ones that I feel like I have the strongest grasp on, is a desert fantasy adventure story. So for now, I'm just gonna call it my desert fantasy. This is set in a fantasy world based off of the Chihuahuan Desert, which is a place that I adore and spent many summers in growing up, and I'm just really excited to write a desert fantasy that's not like Saharan desert, because I feel like a lot of desert fantasies have this idea of like huge sand dunes and stuff, and that's just actually not what most deserts in the world look like. And as someone who grew up on the edge of the desert, I am excited to showcase a different type of desert and fun stuff you can do in a desert fantasy with that. So yes, my current idea is about a woman who works as a ranger for a fantasy desert nation. Number 2, spark of inspiration. Do your ideas begin with characters, plot, world building, or something else entirely? I think my ideas are a 60-40 split of 60% of them begin with the world, something about the world, whether it's the magic system or the setting or something like that, and 40% of them begin with an element of plot. Sometimes that element of plot is like an occupation for the main character, so I guess you could consider that beginning with character, but character is always the last thing that comes to me. I almost never know who my characters are going to be until I really sit down and start plotting out the story and trying to figure out what type of characters I need to do what I want with any given story. So yeah, world and plot come first, and typically elements of world and plot come in conjunction with each other as I do those early stages of building a new idea. 3, brainstorm. How do you puzzle piece your story elements together? Do you start with the ending, make your way to the beginning, or vice versa? I do often start with the climax. I think once the initial idea is there and I start sort of putting those pieces together of world and plot elements that I think would work well in conjunction with each other, very quickly my brain jumps to the type of climax that I want to see in that world plot system. And once I have the climax, then I go back to the beginning and start building pieces to that climax. again, going back to my desert fantasy, once I had that basic idea of the magic system, the ranger occupation, and the sort of political structure of a desert fantasy world in conjunction with those things, very quickly I sat down with my brother. It was actually as we were heading to the airport, this was years ago, as we were heading to the airport to visit our mom, I want to believe, as we were sitting in the like shuttle bus from the parking lot to the airport, I talked out an entire climax with my brother that I thought would be really cool to see in that world with that political system, with that magic system that I had been thinking about. Number 4, keep or toss. How do you know when you want to keep or dump a story idea? I never dump any ideas. Sometimes, you know, every novel, every story is the conglomerate of a lot of ideas, and sometimes I will realize that a certain idea that I've put into that novel doesn't work, which is the case with my desert fantasy. I tried to write it, actually. I tried to write the first draft back in fall of 2018, and I got to like 15,000 words, and I was not having fun. It was not working for me at all, and I stopped writing it because I didn't know what exactly was that wasn't working with that story. I knew I still loved the world and my main characters, and I loved the climax I was wanting to go for, but the actual writing was just didn't work. And then now that I'm reflecting on that story, as I've decided that, you know, it's gonna be my next project, I realized that the issue was with my sort of moral antagonist, the motivation behind my antagonist, and therefore like the things that happen in the plot related to what the antagonist was doing did not actually work. So I threw out that idea for the antagonist's motivation, and I've pulled in a new antagonist motivation, and all of a sudden the story just clicked so much better in my mind, and I really think I'll have an easier time writing it this time than I did fall 2018, because the roadmap has changed as a result of the antagonist motivation idea being thrown out and a new one coming in. Number 5, original idea. How much of your original idea for your story is actually used once everything is finished? A lot. Like, I think the world typically doesn't change that much because that's one of the first things I come up with, and I'm very world building focused in general. So like that's where the world building is what the plot ends up being built around, and the plot and the world become integral to each other. So the world doesn't typically change. The sort of climax I'm building towards almost never changes, or the main idea of it never changes. So really the only thing that changes typically in the original idea are the details. Sometimes like my main character's motivation will change, or in the case of the desert fantasy, my antagonist motivation changes, which actually in changing the antagonist motivation will also change my main character's motivation as she starts to realize what the antagonist is doing. Those two kind of like coincide with each other. That's often what changes the most are my characters, because I have a really hard time actually creating characters from the get-go. I usually have to discovery write who my characters are, or at least like try to write who I want, and if I fail and struggle, I realize that like my characters are what's gone wrong typically. So yeah, those are what changes. Number 6, hide or share. Do you share your book ideas with friends or keep them secret? There are some friends that I share everything I'm thinking about with. I'm an external processor, so in order for me to figure out what I want to write, I have to tell someone about it. So my brother is someone that I will often talk out plots with. I have my like primary critique partner, writing best friend, who was also my college roommate, is the person that hears like every part of the process and me figuring stuff out, and I absolutely love her for that, and for other things. Most of my writing friends, like anyone who is a fellow writer, if we have an opportunity to sit down and talk about our stories, I don't have any issue with trying to plot stuff out or figure stuff out with them and tell them my idea, because just the process of retelling someone my ideas for a story, I will often think of new things, or they'll say something that will spark a new idea and a new detail for that story. So I love sharing, but I'm trying to get better about not sharing publicly with strangers, because I'm trying to get better about like protecting the details of my stories for myself. So like I have no problem telling you that it's a desert fantasy with a magical ranger, because if someone out there was very inspired by that concept, the desert fantasy magical ranger story they would write would not be the same story that I'm writing. But if I told you all the details of the story, then it gets a little more dicey. 7, dream. Have any of your book ideas originated with a dream or nightmare? I think I've pulled like little elements from dreams sometimes, but in recent years, no, not really. 8, doppelganger. Have you ever had an idea for a story, but then see a similar premise in a book, TV show, movie? Yeah, I think that, you know, sometimes there's this like collective hive mind of creativity. So like when I was coming up with my witch story, all of the sudden, after like as I was and after I wrote my first draft of my witch YA, there was witch stuff everywhere. It just like boomed all of a sudden. It felt like everyone was reimagining and writing witch ideas. So like that kind of thing happens a lot. And sometimes it happens in such a way that you're like, oh shoot, like this is too similar. I can no longer write this the way I wanted to write it, because it would seem like I was plagiarizing even though I wasn't. So that's one of the reasons why people recommend, and I agree with, if you want to write, you need to read in the genre that you're writing voraciously, because you need to know what already exists so that you can create original spins on ideas. Number 9, big screen inspiration. Have any of your favorite movies / TV shows sparked ideas for scenes in your book? I think so, and it doesn't even have to be a favorite TV show or movie. For instance, my climax of my desert fantasy book, I came up with it because of a particular scene in a TV show that I was like, I want to do my spin on this. And like that show and that piece are very different from my desert fantasy, but the idea of what that scene was, I took and I said, let me figure out what my own version of this would be. So yes, absolutely. Final question, number 10, nostalgia. What is the oldest / first story idea you remember coming up with or writing down? In like 4th and 5th grade is when I first started writing creatively, and I remember like a fair number of ideas I came up with in that time period, and I do not remember what order they came in. So like I had a story about a girl who made friends with a unicorn, had a story about a group of friends who go to summer camp in the Amazon rainforest, and then their camp gets bombed, but they were like out hiking, so then they have to survive in the rainforest, and then they find dragon eggs. Like these were all the types of things I was coming up with. I had another story that was one actually that came from a dream, like completely, which was about a girl who found a silver tiger cub, and then her family was attacked by people who were trying to get that silver tiger cub, so she had to run with the cub. And that was like, the dream was really weird because it started like modern times. She was in like a modern house, and then they get attacked, and when she runs, suddenly it like switched to like this medieval fantasy, and she like ran up to like a hut with like farmers or something, which when I was like writing the idea down, I literally, because I was in like 4th or 5th grade, I literally just wrote the idea down exactly as it was in my dream. So like it did that weird genre switch in the middle of it. So whatever. Oh, actually, my first story I ever wrote was in 3rd grade, because my 3rd grade teacher had everyone in the class write a book, and then we got it like published. And I think my mom probably has the physical book still, and it was about a young man named Matt who lived in a village with like a bunch of talking animals. So there was like Mr. and Mrs. Butterfly and like Mr. and Mrs. Dog or something, right? Someone, oh God, I'm trying to remember. Someone kidnapped Mrs. Butterfly, and so Matt teams up with the other animals to go rescue Mrs. Butterfly from this like facility. And like one of the, I think it was Mr. Butterfly, like Matt had him go like fly in front of the security camera so they couldn't see them, and then everyone snuck in. And like for a third grader, it was a pretty intense like action adventure rescue story, I think. And at the very end, the whole town like baked Matt this like ginormous 12-layer cake or something. So yeah, anyway, hopefully my ideas are a little bit more sophisticated than the ones I came up with when I was in elementary school. So there you go. That was the entire story ideas tag. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about my next project. And please be sure to subscribe if you want to, you know, see my journey of writing this desert fantasy, and also what may or may not happen with my witch YA. Please be sure to check out my description for other versions of this tag that I linked, as I said, and also for causes that you should support. I always have links for causes that you should support in the description. And I also think for the next couple videos until the election, I'm going to include some links in regards to voting. Be a good citizen in whatever way you can with these various things. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to chatting with y'all in the comments.